Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palm, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, ooh, talking about culture, hey, politics, education, entertainment, hey, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on.
Hello there, in focus of Liberia land. Welcome to the show. Today we have a very, very interesting show for you today. We're going to be talking about literacy. Our show is entitled Liberia Reads. How do we address literacy and numeracy in Liberia? And with us we are graced with the presence of Elaine Saba, who is a educator, a profound teacher trainer with vast years of experience. Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Jimmy, and thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
And joining us on the panel will be Dr. Tue Me, and she too is a scholar in education and educator. And Dr. Man, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Okay, and of course, gracing us again also is Abu Wakai Dukli, who recently adopted the name Wakai. No, I'm joking.
I wonder why.
So
But
you
he-
bought into what Dennis was telling you.
I know he was just joking. I know. So, welcome to the show, Brother Dukli.
Thank you, Jimmy, and I want to say hello and thank you to my fellow panelists, Elaine and Dr. Tuoma. Please correct me if I mispronounce your name.
Saba and Tue Me.
Tuweme, Dr. Tuweme.
There you go. So, Elaine, could you at least introduce yourself and tell us of your past experience, especially with your experience in Liberia, particularly?
You know, as I was telling Jimmy, and I always say, I hate talking about credentials because for me, the focus is always on what you do, your output. But for the sake of an introduction, as he mentioned, I am a 27-year classroom veteran teacher from the United States. So I taught here for 27 years. I'm an elementary teacher, or was. And then I went on to train teachers for about 3 years. And then I went on as program manager for Teach for Liberia. I went on as CEO for Teach for Liberia. And I'm currently the director of academics at HELA, Heritage International Leadership Academy in Monrovia. And among those different titles, I was going to Liberia during between those titles to train teachers there and help to do oversight for schools. So and the reason I did that was I wanted to be able to contextualize my experience here in the United States, the curriculum, the teaching techniques to fit those of, the requirements for Liberia, because being a teacher here in the US is different from teaching in Liberia and vice versa, because the needs are different, very, very different. Though you may know the methodology of teaching, you still got to contextualize it to the settings for our country. So that's just a little bit about me. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. Thank you. And just briefly, Dr. Tua, could you also give us a little bit synopsis of your experience, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dr. Tue May, and I've been an early educator for the past 16 years. Coupled with that, I've worked with a lot of nonprofit organizations. Current one called Foundation for African Children Education and Health Services, where I partner with another organization named Light. We do donations and education services, where we've sent some products to Liberia, where we donated to orphanages, and so many other things that we do. And even here in America, we go to like homeless shelter, read stories, do homework activities, and everything else. But other than that, I've been with the education system since 2009.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming with us. And of course, Mr. Dukley, I know you too are a teacher. I understand you're versed in the Quran and other theologies as well. Could you give us a brief synopsis of your experience?
Yeah, my experience is that um, I started as a school psychologist. And as a school psychologist, you primarily work in school, and in our province, in many places, it's usually required that a school psychologist is a teacher. That wasn't mandatory in my school division, but I thought it wise to do Bachelor of Education just so I'm on par with my teachers. And so um, I taught for about 9 years. But for the most part, I was working as a school psychologist until 2013 when I moved on to the university. And I've been at the university since then. But prior to that, I was working as a school psychologist and then uh, a classroom teacher. But that's my current qualification. But prior to that, I did Islamic studies, and I got a graduate degree in Islamic studies as well.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, joining us finally on stage will be Thomas Johnson. Thomas, we've been going around, everybody giving a brief synopsis of their experience in education. I know from my experience, you were at KRTTI before matriculating to the U.S. Could you give us a brief um, synopsis of your experience in education? You're mute. You're on mute. Unmute. You have to unmute your microphone.
All right,
There you
can you
go.
hear me now?
Yes, yes.
All right, it's a delight to be on this platform. I struggle a little to get on board, but hopefully everything
We
is
all
going to
do.
unfold correctly. Um, I did elementary education in the 70s at the Kakata Rural Teacher Training Institute in Kakaka, Liberia. After that, I taught elementary school for a number of years, specifically at the Charles D.B. King Elementary School. And then I matriculated to the University of Liberia, where I did English major and political science minor. After graduating the University of Liberia, I was hired as a vice principal for academic affairs at the Assemblies of God High School. In the 1987 specifically, I came to the United States and I was able to do grad education in theology, divinity at the New York Theological Seminary. Following my graduation, I was an adjunct professor for a year and a half in the certificate program. I am an associate pastor at the United Christian Assemblies Church, and I've worked with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene for 24 plus years, retired, but I do like education. And whenever education is discussed, I'm delighted to be a part of that discussion.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
I always say that your first love, right? Like your first love was education, and you still enthused. So, let me go back to our guest, Elaine. You know, we look, we know that the children are our future,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
right, and it's important that I guess we prepare them to be the future leaders. Um, in your opinion, from your experience, what would you believe is the most urgent barrier to literacy in Liberia today? In other words, what is holding our kids back from being the future leaders as they're meant to be?
Okay, so before we get into the topic of literacy, let's get some clarity. Again, I always like to contextualize things because we're talking, most of our audience will be from Liberia. So in Liberia, when we say somebody is illiterate, we mean the person can't speak English, correct? Everybody agrees with me, or they can barely speak English.
Yeah,
Somebody who they can, there were no money because most times they're probably trading or something like that. But standard English, they have a deficiency there. So usually we talk about Liberians, and in that perspective, we say the illiterate. When you talk about literacy in education, you're talking about the proficiency in writing, reading, spelling, comprehending, just language arts, pretty much the language arts components. So the most urgent barrier, I would say, is low quality teaching in Liberia. And let me tell you why. Keep in mind again, we're talking about Liberia. If you were talking about the United States, then you say, but if the child is experiencing issues with literacy, why would you only put it on teaching, on the teacher's side? Why would you say low quality teaching? Couldn't the parents help them read to them at home? Take them to the library, all those things. But when you're talking about Liberia, you must keep in mind that most of our people may not be able to read to their children. So most of this literacy work that we're talking about will rest on the teachers. And if the teachers do not know how to promote it, to make reading interesting in the classroom where a child would jump to pick up a book at any moment to read, because we all agree reading is it's an avenue to bigger things, right, to experience in the world. But if you are a teacher who does not possess the ability to teach literacy, reading, writing, comprehension, especially comprehension, then the risk of children not being interested in literacy is high, much, much higher than it would normally. So I think low quality teaching.
wow,
Again, and let me just say one more thing. Here in the US, reading teachers, it's a different kind of certification. And I know Dr. Tua will agree with me. To be in early childhood, to teach reading here, you must do more hours, correct, ma'am? Am I correct? You must be certified to teach reading in the lower grades. Not anybody can teach kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, first grade reading. You have to have more reading hours. You have to have a reading license to be, because that is the background, the pillar to support everything in literacy as the child goes on. So I would say low quality teaching.
quality teacher. That's interesting. So because some people argue that if the child is hungry, they will not learn. So coming from
Well,
a
this discussion, panelists, let's assume that all of those needs have been met.
Ah,
because those are all different issues, right? We don't have the time here today to discuss children going to school hungry, children not, sitting in classrooms falling out. No, 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 no. Let's assume that all those conditions have been met for
right.
learning to take place. Then the next thing now, what is this barrier? What is stopping our children from achieving high literacy rates and
Hmm.
low quality teaching? If I do not know how to teach reading, or if I cannot even read myself, how can I teach reading? Because it's a whole different skill. To
Yes.
teach comprehension, decoding, all of that, it's a whole different skill. But also, how do I interest my children where they will pick up books to just read? I must have the skills to be able to do that. So it does rest with the teachers in Liberia.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Dr. Twillier, would like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think also, and I appreciate you saying that, but I also want to add, about equity, access,
Equity?
equity and access
Hmm.
such that there's books. And I do agree that we do need to have a continuous teacher education, teacher preparation, or teacher training. Where that most time people think that once you've gone to the university or you've gone to some level of high school, that warrants you the right to teach. That's where it stops. But I think in every aspect of even as a person within your personal life, you keep learning, right? You keep
Hmm.
reading, you keep improving yourself. So I think that needs to also happen where you have teachers in all aspects, whether from the university to high school to elementary to even elementary, which is like from 0 to 6th grade, I think, in Liberia. There has to be a continuous education or continued teachers training. So I do agree that if the teacher does not have the quality or maybe has the limited qualification to continue improving or self improvement, that can be a barrier. But also access. If the student does not have access to the system, does not have access to maybe the books, and I'm talking about not expired books. Even though we say how can a book expire, but books that are like
Mhm.
that is old. So we need to have access to books that are recent, current education within the education system, and also and I do agree. Even though given that everything is current, that there's a possibility that the students at school have food they're eating, but then there's also the possibility that it's not, right? Because here in America, where the children they go for breakfast, and then there's lunch, and then for those that stay after, they probably have snacks. Hopefully that can be also implemented within the education system in Liberia, because most of the children that are going to school, if they're walking distances, again, access. What if walking to bring the school closer as opposed
Hmm.
and further away? We should also implement those same things where they're walking distances. There's hunger. They should have access to food, to water, to proper education system, and also teachers who, because they're impacting knowledge into our future leaders, right? So that they have the right level of training to teach our future leaders the right thing so that they can make decisions for the country tomorrow.
Thank you. I'm going to put you on the spot, Tom, because you are a KRTTI graduate teaching elementary school. How would you assess the preparation for teachers? The one, at least the one you experienced in KRTTI.
At the time, I attended KRTTI. KRTTI was one of the top institutions of teacher training in the country. They had KRTTI, the ZRTTI, and other teacher training institutions. Now, this is why I'm saying this. KRTTI had its full staff, Liberian staff. KRTTI staff was supplemented by the UNESCO experts,
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
to every department you had an expert. And KRTTI was so equipped that everyone at KRTTI was on a scholarship. So
Ah,
you really had to maintain a standard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in keeping with President Tolbert's integrated rural development, what happened was that standardized schools were constructed throughout the major towns in the country or centers. And when you graduated from KRTTI, you were sent to one of those institutions. Mind you, you were well equipped in all the subjects,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you were effectively trained to teach, to encourage people to
Mm-hmm.
understand the environment you were in. You had to do sociology, rural sociology,
Mm-hmm.
understand the culture of the people so that you'll be able to integrate them within your system. And we had to define education more than what we say today. We did not go there and say, this person is not educated, that person is not educated. All right. But because education then, to our understanding, was any skill set a person acquires that enables them to make a living. All right. The only difference with the rural population was that they could not read and write, which was called literacy. Okay. The thrust was to ensure that quality educated education was provided, was also to integrate the society into the educational system. That included the adults. So it was a plan to include adult literacy as well.
hmm.
Yes. But post-war Liberia, everything is at a standstill. We do have an opportunity to revisit the plans that were implemented in the 70s. Plans designed to ensure throughout the country that educational institutions were established, at least on the elementary level, and they were well equipped and the manpower there to carry out that vision of the government.
Ah,
Let me address the other part, the cultural aspect that you addressed, and the lack of facilities, the lack of books in the school systems, and so forth. In the public educational sector, of course, that's a major problem
hmm,
where there's a lack of books.
hmm,
In some private institutions, the problem lingers as well. But for my part, I started my education in Cavala Fire School in Maryland. And I was lucky enough from the very primary level to have had books throughout my primary level. You went to school, you had your books in the first grade, all the books you needed. Your problem was just to take those books to school.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
Mm-hmm.
to help us solve some of these problems, we could appeal to the institutions like Firestone and all of the other public or private institutions that are now operating in our country to contribute all of the things we need to boost our educational system. But I tell you what, Firestone was excellent. The only thing I have with respect to the kinds of books that we used was that we learned all about America.
hmm,
So you everything was centered on America. So you graduated knowing more about America than about
hmm.
your African environment and so forth. So that's the change that has to occur
Wow.
with developing the curriculum, the kinds of books we 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 teach, we use in our schools. You see, once the pupils are not identifying with the context in the book, they'll not be interested.
Hmm.
So you read about folks in America, you get out of school, you go home. Hey,
You
it's a
can't
different
relate.
environment.
Yeah, yeah.
A child puts the books down after doing the homework and does other things. But if the books were to reflect their culture, reflect their personalities, they'll relate to that. They want to read more about themselves.
That is a good, interesting point you brought up, Mr. Duca. Quickly, you've been a person in about culture. I've heard you elaborate on this. Do you think we've made a mistake in the past that we did not culturally adapt our books and reading to our reality, but instead read somebody else's?
Yes, I guess that could be part of it. But this is a very deeply serious issue for me personally. Having been introduced to various educational systems from my formative years, beginning with Egypt. When I went to Egypt, I started in grade 8. And so I spent 10 years in the school system there. And also, when I came, when I moved to Canada as a young man, I also spent 10 years in the school system at the university level. So I listened to Elaine, and she says something that really got to me. So when I got hired here, I was hired by a school division that has a department called the Child Guidance Clinic. So the Child Guidance Clinic was part of the school division, but it's a sort of a standalone, where the Child Guidance Clinic was staffed by reading clinicians, school psychologists, and school social workers. And so one of the components that they put emphasis on at the elementary level is reading. So I used to wonder, I used to ask my manager, why do you guys have, a reading clinician? And so he kind of gave me the rundown as to why every school needs, a school, reading clinicians and all that. And so the focus is usually only on teachers and students, but it goes beyond that and it's more than that. And so you ask me right now about the content. You have to remember the history of Liberia itself as a nation has been written by non-Liberians, and that is also reflected in our history, in many other things. So that's just a little tiny, piece of it. I remember, I know in grade 6 in Liberia, I'm not sure if they still have it, but there was a textbook called Ancient Africa. And in that book, they had the pyramids. They had a few other African countries in that book. I remember that was the only textbook that we had that you can say, yeah, it has an African content. Besides that, everything else was American content. I remember one other textbook was Our Country and Other Lands. I think that was the title. You look at the chemistry, the biology, the history, everything was American textbooks. And so that has been our history, and it has reflected in everything that we do. But you see, every time we talk about education in Liberia, the focus is always on, the schools, the buildings, but it goes beyond that, because in order for you to have the desired outcome, you have to have the necessary resources that produce that outcome for you. And like I said, when Eileen spoke about reading in her presentation, I thought that was very, very relevant. And so even at the university level, you see people in Liberia, they cannot read even at that level, because the foundation for reading was not established at the onset. And so they go on, they go to high school, middle school, and up to university, they cannot read because the foundation was not established at the onset when they started schooling. So for me, I remember, when I was in in grade 9 in Egypt, and um, middle of the school year would be referred to, because we were considered international student or foreign student, would be referred to school psychologists, would be referred to school, reading clinicians to improve our reading skills. But I didn't really make much of it until when I came to Canada, and I realized the emphasis that is put on reading at such an early age, so that if you are able to read at that level, many other things can be possible, through that. Me as a school psychologist, one of the things that I was used to doing is to search for learning disability. What is there that is causing this child, he or she is not able to learn? So I keep to learn that there are many other things that must come together before that child is able to acquire what he or she is supposed to acquire at the grade level. And so overall, you see that in Liberia, not because teachers are now properly trained, but the child is not properly prepared to learn. And so as a result, you have all these compounding, and because it's so there are just so many things to decipher, we don't know where to start, and as a result, the people we are trying to help, we ended up not helping them. And
Mm.
so it's just kind of a difficult to sort of a pinpoint where to start. But if you really want to create an environment where you get the expected outcome, you really have to revamp the entire system. And by revamping the entire system, I mean from nursery up to elementary level, which is um, the years where you set the stage for the future of these students. So really, Jimmy, the content of what we learn is just one part of it, but it has to be holistic. The approach has to be holistic to see all the other parts that come together in order for us to come up with that a desired outcome.
Wonderful. So yeah, from all the input, let me come back to you, Elaine. From all the input that we got, how can we build a culture of reading? In communities with limited access to books or libraries. Given all that was said here, so
Yeah.
how do we go about building it?
Okay. So first of all, I have an important announcement. Mr. Thomas Johnson, I'm from Maryland County. Oh. They are Maryland woman here. So just so you know,
Okay. Yes,
um, you know, we talked about the accessibility of books, materials, resources. We talk about textbooks. Let's just go to what we call here reading for fun, pleasure books, right? Mr. Johnson spoke about uh, relatability. When students can relate to a subject matter, the tendency for them to learn is high. Learning is relational. We know that, right? So if the students don't have any books in their classrooms, we're in the interior. Let me speak for the interior children. The thought that always came to my mind in Liberia, and a very long, long time ago, they did it for a minute. What about a book on wheels,
Mm.
bookmobile? Why can't we take buses? You're listening to me. I hope somebody from Ministry of Education here listening because this thing is getting tiring.
Mm-hmm.
Put those books in buses and drive those buses to different areas, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it such a big deal? You have this girl, Brenda Brewer. She builds reading libraries in underserved communities, right? And the only thing she asks is that people within the communities go there to man those libraries. And she gets volunteers to read to the children in the communities. That's an excellent idea. But what if you can't get one of those built there? Start having bookmobiles going around Monrovia. Make reading, and I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I'm so passionate about this. Make reading a national priority.
Mhm.
Make it a national priority. If you take the materials to the students, Monrovia is not Liberia. We have all those places, those different Fishtown, my brother, Kavala area, Fishtown. You have all those different places. Soniwe, West Point. The children, even though they're in Monrovia, but they're far out. Take bookmobiles to them. Different books, different genres that may appeal to these children. Find people that would man those buses or vans or whatever you want to call them that would be willing to grab those students and read to them. I promise you, you see those children running when for when the scheduled time arrives for those vans or buses to pull in the interior. Have them stationed there. But Again, we have to make reading, literacy a priority. When we have done this, then all these things here we can grab them. You know, again, when all of Maslow's right needs have been met, where the clothing, the feeding, or let's assume all of those have been met, and target and just zoom in now on the literacy component of our children. Take it to them, bookmobile, low cost,
So you're advocating taking the books to them
so the communities,
through the community.
so the communities.
Interesting, interesting.
That's and back in the old days, I guess because I'm so old, I remember all of that, and not necessarily in Liberia, in underserved communities, different parts of the world, where they've decided to make reading literacy such a huge part of the education system. That's what they still do it in different parts of the world. They go and they carry these bookmobiles to these children to read to them because you want them to connect with reading. Through reading, they will see different parts of the world. Oh, if I can read about a castle in Ireland, then I need to read about who lives there. And yes, it may not relate to me, but it tells me in my child's mind that there are better things out there. And I know these books I'm reading are not lying to me. So even if it's a story fairy tale book, fairy tales have happy endings. They make children happy. But some of those boys that like football or soccer, they can read books on sports. So just take different genres of books to these children in vans. They don't have to travel to Monrovia to go to maybe the only one library or two libraries we have there now.
Hmm.
And it's so cheap to do it. That's what I'm thinking.
Wow. So, books on wheels.
Books on wheels.
Books
Book
on
of
wheels.
it. Mhm.
Boom. Would you like to chime in there, Doctor Man?
Yeah, I mean that's such a smart and wonderful idea that you provided, Elaine. Because I wrote it down. It's like book on wheels. Maybe it's something.
You wrote it down, hon. Keep it for Liberia, please.
And no one, yeah, definitely for Liberia. I was thinking of an opportunity that I gave to my a goddaughter that I have in Liberia. I called and the mom was like, I mean, I was talking to the mom and she was watching the movie. I said, "What are you watching?" And she said, "One of these new movies that came out for kids." And I said, "I tell you this, let's make a deal. What if you take a book and you read, and every page you read, you summarize it, and then I can give you something, a stipend for that."
Oh,
That's to encourage her reading.
oh
I
wow.
that if that opportunity was given to the students, one of the things that we do in early education, especially like the preschool level, we say that they have all these wonderful picturesque things, and you put in the classroom and you talk to the kids about it. But just like Elaine was saying, okay, but when you go outside, it's different, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, what if we talk about stories, what if we encourage certain people, writers, to create books, stories, or maybe make the book relatability, in a sense that uh, when you're talking about, instead of going to the supermarket, you talk about going to the farmers market or going to the open market or going to whatever it is. Replace those words with something that is familiar to them, so that when they go home, they can retain whatever it is. Because we did talk about it. Yes, it's true that all the things we learned about was all about Europe and America, and nothing about our rich, beautiful Africa, right? Because we have all the resources that people go there and harvest and bring over to their country and make their country rich. But we sit there because we were not told to value what we have. We were not taught to value that. So as a result of that, we don't see ourselves within our land. So what if we do have authors that are Liberians or that are from other African countries. What if we introduce those books and say this is what it looks like, or however it is, or what if we encourage them to maybe like instead of watching TV or talking, okay, maybe we'll have a book fair, or books on wheels, or maybe you encourage certain organizations, because there are lots of people who want to go and do progress in all the different countries, right? So what if we encourage them? Maybe in this time we allocated a place and say, let's build a library here, and just like Elaine was saying, have someone, maybe the townspeople, someone have the responsibility or people pair off or pick and say we're going to read to the students, or maybe have a reading fair or reading fest or something like that, so the kids read to each other. However it is, we can encourage that. We can encourage literacy in that way as well. So I think the idea of book on wheel, or maybe a library at schools, encourage making sure that if someone's opening a school, make sure you have a library there, or maybe a public library open in every county, and all, something to encourage literacy.
Okay, so Tom, here's a novel idea. You may not have a whole building for a library, and you're not having the distance to a central location may be far. But if you can bring the books to the students, to the communities, maybe that is one way of addressing this literature issue. What do you have to weigh on it?
Well, absolutely. The preceding speakers have very excellent ideas. Books on wheel, reading should be pleasurable, accessible, uh, incentives given to folks that read and to encourage others. Uh, no, it doesn't have to be in a library, four walls library. Uh, we could make books accessible to homes, wherever the person lives, wherever the person works or hangs out. One major thing I will add, though, it should be a national enterprise
Mm,
Hmm.
coming from the top. We encourage the leaders to really push this
mhm,
because our folks listen to the leaders. If
Hmm.
the presidency would declare this as a national priority number one, we want literacy to spread throughout Liberia. Therefore, I'm mandating this to be done. I think the population will be galvanized to do something about it. Okay, each one reads to the next person, covering everybody, young as well as adults. Though we do have the experts to do the training in the teacher training institutions, in
Mhm.
other institutions, but the whole population should be galvanized because we are indeed now rebuilding Liberia. Liberia was destroyed, set back several years. In the rebuilding process, we need all hands on deck, especially those we've entrusted with the stewardship of the nation at the highest level. Should drive this, and I think it will yield positive results.
Excellent, excellent. Mr. Duca, please add your own 2 cents. No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Mr. Duca.
Sorry. Sorry. Yes, I think what the brother just said, that this reading initiative should be a national agenda.
mhm,
And one of the problems that I always said we have at the Ministry of Education is that they have their priority misplaced. And like you eloquently said now, uh, reading should be a national agenda right across the board. And I think, like you said, sometimes it's not necessarily that you have a library, a big library with all these books. You can start at the lower level, little by little, like you said, individually, and individual schools. And so, and then over time, but you see, for me, what really makes me feel a lot more critical is that there is usually allocation, a budgetary allocation for the Ministry of Education. So, they should be able to provide some of these basic reading materials
Hmm.
for kindergarten and nursery, and elementary to begin with. So sometimes, and again, I personally don't buy this excuse of the war. Look, it's been almost 30 years since we had this conflict. It's been 30 years since the cessation of hostility. If only the national governments can pay attention, the necessary attention to the building block. And I think this building block begins with our educational system. We need to revamp the educational system so that they can reflect our current reality. And by our current reality, I also mean the content. so the content can also reflect on our present day reality.
Hmm.
As previous speakers have said, if the student, if the content, whatever he or she is learning, has a resonance, then it will create some sense of a curiosity. And once the curiosity is there, then the ability to apply that curiosity to learn will almost come naturally. And so that's part of what the Ministry of Education is supposed to do. Sometimes when I'm criticizing the ministry on these platforms, one of the things that I always say is that I'm not even sure if the Ministry of Education knows the number of schools there are in their control.
Mm.
And I usually say this sarcastically, but I sometimes feel that it almost like true, because look, we cannot develop as a nation if our learning institutions are not equipped to to mold our students to become the men and women that we expect them to be. So
Mhm.
really, one good place to start is to come up with a program where reading is going to be the centerpiece of whatever we do moving forward.
Okay, excellent. I guess he dropped off, but Dr. Williams had joined us. Okay, so you guys, we just probably answered the my other question that I was about to ask. What role government and the private sector should play? But all of you have iterated that it should be of prominence. Is your top priority. Um, so I want to go around the room.
Jimmy,
Link,
don't that there the question is how? How can they do that? I don't know if that's what you're getting to.
yes.
Okay.
How
But
can we build?
before I get to that, Mr. Dukley, much respect. Much respect. And I'll leave it at that. Much respect. Um, so besides government making reading a national priority, it should be a human
Mm,
rights issue.
it is.
Because if people cannot read, they cannot comprehend. There's so many issues. You have the ripple effect is so huge. It's almost unimaginable. So you have issues today that exist in our country because people are having they cannot write. They cannot even understand half of the time what they're reading. So I'm going to leave that one alone. There is an Indian guy in Monrovia, Mr. Jetty, I believe his name.
Yes,
This man is always feeding Liberians.
yes,
An
yes,
Indian man. He's a businessman.
Mhm.
yes,
He's always feeding Liberians during the holidays, even non-holidays. You see those long lines. Jenny
yes.
will feed our people. This is a man who is vested in our country, an Indian man. Okay. That leads me to, I'm going to jump ahead of myself, Jimmy, to how can the civil part of our society help to push reading, right?
Yeah, that's the next thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Private sector, private
yeah,
sector. These businesses that are in our country, we need, when government has made it a national priority, as I said, and a human rights issue that we have to meet, we need to also, in a sense, not force, but encourage businesses to form partnership with our local communities to provide resources, provide resources, different books, programs, whatever they can come up with. And in return, government can give them tax breaks. You see what I'm saying? So I was thinking, I said, but if Jetty can go and feed people, government is looking favorably upon him because he's doing these things. I'm sure we could use businesses in Liberia to help promote reading if only if we are ourselves are serious. So businesses could help. Government also, besides making it a priority, a human rights issue, government should, and Mr. Dukele did, he touched that, there should be funds allocated for reading, for literacy. And those funds should be prioritized. And schools should be held accountable. Look at the WIAC and the WAS results. Jimmy, you are aware, a few years ago, I tutored students in Beansville. Remember when all the students passed, I tutored them for about 3 months. I got
Right.
some assistance. I discovered during my various trips to Liberia and helping the schools that the majority of those students could not comprehend the questions. It wasn't, Mr. Ducle, it wasn't because they didn't know the answer.
Mhm.
It was because half of the time they couldn't they could not decipher those questions.
Hmm.
And that led me to believe, I say, this is all a comprehension thing.
Comprehension issue.
So
Yeah.
I took paths, manuals, and I tutored those children along with my assistants. 100% of those students pass. It can be done. I didn't perform any magic. I just took what they already had. So
Mhm.
I digress. How can the
Yeah.
civil society help? And I was
Mhm.
thinking, we got how many of you know the Eastern Star Society, all the different society, like men society business.
Mhm.
When you see them marching in the white on the, I'm like, what? The Masonic temple and all of that. Those different societies, the clubs in Monrovia, the churches, adopt communities, adopt them, partner with them to bring reading to those communities. I used to read for a lady who had a nonprofit after school program. Very simple. All she did was she went to this community after school, grabbed all those children, and she read to them, play games with them. She invited me several times. I sat, lie me and say hundreds of children, and I'm sitting in the middle holding this book and just reading to them. And I guarantee you, there were no misbehaviors. They were so into that book. These kids are starving for reading. So the civil community adapt, the civil group of people, society, adapt our community, business sectors, partner with schools, with community as well. Government give them some kind of incentive. Cut back on the taxes. Let them invest in the community. And government, of course, allocate money to prioritize literacy. And of course, above all, make sure that all children are served. The underserved communities should be targeted first because that is where we have our highest literacy problem. Go to the underserved communities and help those children. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's welcome to the panel Dr. George Williams. Dr. Williams, well, thanks for joining us.
Jimmy,
Um, yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to the panel. I had the privilege of speaking to Eileen about a week ago.
Oh, yeah, that's
Um,
good. Oh, how are you? How are you?
yes, ma'am. How you doing?
It's a
Uh,
pleasure.
yeah, on the eve of so Jimmy, there's a lot that can be done. I premise my statements by saying every solution Liberia needs, Liberians have.
Mm-hmm.
It is the absence of a will to cooperate and partner between Liberians as far as those in government and those outside of government to partner. There is a community of goodwill, ready and willing to help. We love our country. We're sacrificing afternoon to listen to programs, hold these unending conversations because we love that country. And the solutions we have, they're out there. Now, we've employed so many different measures. I hear some of the innovations about books on wheels. A couple of years ago, Elaine, I went to Liberia, met with UNDP Ministry of Education. I said, you know what? It's going to take a lot to build libraries around the country. But one simple way to enhance literacy is to do something called literacy murals. I
Mm,
teach English here in the US and history. And part of that process involves cascading and breaking down using graphic
mhm,
organizers.
mhm,
What if we painted graphic organizers on the walls of public schools in the
mhm,
community so that the community has access to it? The students have access to it. Parents be walking by and say, "What's that on your wall?" Kids be able to explain, "Oh, the teacher say if you use this organizer, it will help you with that." Teachers are forced to use it. When
mhm,
teachers go in the community and at the King Juice shop, people are asking them that stuff on the wall. How y'all use it? How do you use it? principals themselves.
Mhm.
We have a multi-layer of problems. Principals have no capacity to police and supervise teachers. I hear the emphasis on teaching, but who supervises the teacher? Principals. Most of them come from the church. They're
Mhm.
deacons, they're pastors, they're
Mhm.
in the church. So there's a multitude of problems. We, as outsiders, can only f- create our own niches. You know, Ellen talk about reading to the kids, yeah, building tutorials, but there's a lot that can be done. When I spoke to her, you know, one of those things that came out, if her school is doing good, what about partnering her school with a public school nearby?
Mhm.
Ellen, how are you doing it? How can we learn from you? How can that spill over? We have a lot of managers, all these people from the various banks who call themselves retired. Can you imagine what those people could do for our public school system if they serve as monitors or managers or supervisors of the school? They're not principals, just supervisors. Their job, just come and see what the principal is doing. How is he doing his? Nobody's doing that. Our district education officers, we've politicized education so much so that those positions are only political. The people, there's very little coming out of that. No data, that helps us understand what's going on in those counties. So one of the things we've started to push for, and we've written the Senate and the House committees on education, is to depoliticize education. The president cannot be appointing district education officers, principal presidents of universities. Take that away from the president. Take that away. That's just one aspect of it. Another aspect of it will be, as civil society, we have to be innovative. Uh, I'm the first author of economics textbook in Liberia after teaching for almost 9 years. Do you know that almost 15 years after, the Ministry of Education has just gotten to review a copy of my textbook? We mentioned textbook. There are Liberian writers. There are lots and lots of Liberians writing today.
Mhm.
How rigorous is the ministry in going out and sourcing those resources to use in the classroom? Uh, in our conference recently, I'm sorry, I don't wish to take up much of your time, but you know, the director of textbook, the Center of Excellence, was there, and she was explaining to us how lots of Liberians are today bringing in textbook and stuff, and so there's a lot happening, but there's also a lot that can be done. Liberians need to us in education. We're frantic about it. I mean, I've been on this program for over 6 months. I didn't even know that Burka was an educator. I did not know till just now, you know. So there's a lot that can happen. You know, I'm happy to be. I want to just listen in, but I couldn't help but to jump in and just add my voice to the process. There's a need for innovation, and innovation that's contextual. We don't need to come to America to ask for the answers. Liberians have the answers. Let's engage our community. Let's engage our experts to get those responses. So, thank you, everybody, and I just wanted to pop that in.
Right. So it's in your ballpark right now, Dr. Mint. What what role should government, the private sector, and civil society play in advancing literacy nationwide?
I mean, I would assume that within the government there is also a fiscal responsibility to education. I would assume that in the government they already have a portion of funding set aside for education ministry to stream down to other sectors within the education ministry, such as like even whether it's like the university, the high school, the colleges, and all the different areas. But I think that they should have that, and I do agree with some of the things that Elaine was saying that we should also partner with people in the community and see how. But I want us to be wanting to be responsible for that because sometimes when people have responsibility, they may seem that they are the one who will be what we call the shot callers.
Mhm.
So if we can have money from set aside for those purposes, and then we do have those partnerships within the community to support all the different schools, and I do agree. Those that are furthest from opportunity should be considered. Those that are further away that may not have access like how other people do should be considered. And I think that's what the funding should be. But then in those localities, there are people who have, or there are businesses that are there that can be partnered with. That, you know what, okay, for example, the school needs a floor. There is someone built a school, and the school is like, it's just a building of, bricks, and zinc on top of it, but there's no floor. What business is that? How can we have that,
Um,
part to support that school? So I do think that we need to do that. The government should already have funding because education is important. Everything that we said here today, literacy wise, we need to have our students, the children back home. We need the students to learn how to read, write, and not just by memorization. Because most of the time, what they do, they go into class and memorize whatever they regurgitated into the paper, and then they don't remember it anymore. And then
mhm,
tomorrow, ask them a question, they don't know the answer to it. So we need to prioritize everything that reading with comprehension. Everything has to be put in place. And the
mhm,
system does need to be revamped. It needs to be changed. It needs to be reestablished. Even though we had the solution there a long time ago, but we can amend it to fit to this world so that our students can be, can be empowered with everyone else around the world, so that we're not still waiting for
Mhm.
support for our hand down, but we want support from the people within the community. And I do agree, the solution, Liberians do have the solution. We have a lot of people going out the organizations, but they meet with role blockade, right? Some people go there and be like, "Oh, my man, what my own? You got to give me my own, so my own share, so or
Mhm.
I will pass it through. I will not give you access, or
Mhm.
it. I will not give you whatever rights or licensure that you need to go and operate in the place until you give me my little small thing. Why is that? So the people suffer as a result of that. So we
mhm,
move all those things that are in there, and so that the children can have access, because there are a lot of people who wants to go there and provide the opportunity, but they're be met with a lot of, I don't want to say
Red,
hostility
red tapes.
mhm,
part.
Okay. Uh, Tom. Tom, it was just reiterated how the society can help, how stores can help, how businesses can help. In this country, in the U.S., we know that there are educational
mhm.
taxes levied so that will support the school systems. What is your take? Should Liberia impose taxes on every entity to help support its educational program?
I wouldn't say every entity, but I would say some essential entity that have the potential to contribute effectively towards what the objective that we are addressing. Say, for instance, businesses operating in locales where the schools exist.
How
But
about individuals?
there's a need to levy taxes to address critical problems, critical issues that the nation really wants to address, wants to take as a priority. And education or literacy is to my mind, the number one priority. Uh, but let me digress a little, please, if I may, to address the content issue, because the challenge was posed to us at the time I was at the University of Liberia. That was in the 80s. Uh, we did American literature, world literature, and you name it, classic and so forth. But when it came to African literature, I was taken aback when I made a C minus under the teacher.
Hmm.
That was the chair of the English department, Dr. Dramina.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason was that there was a different approach to African literature. I thought I knew something about African literature, but I knew nothing. And the curriculum for African literature, there was not a text in that curriculum, the prescribed books written by a Liberian.
How about Baitimo Unabo?
Or could not make it in the text.
How
The
about
text
Baitimo? Didn't he have a book we used to read at LU?
Which
yeah,
which one was Murder in the Cassava Patch? That one, not
Biting
him.
War. but it was not a part of the English of the required text for English literature.
It was for
Reason being
lower
that
grade. Yeah.
African literature was taught from a perspective of themes. The writers whose work we read wrote on basic themes. For instance, negritude, Africa prior to the coming of the Europeans, protest literature. Africans have now taken over power, the struggle. Those basic themes were what were embedded in their writings. So that if you're reading the work of Chuna Achebe, you are able to see exactly what the African culture at the village level was. So the challenge then for us was listen, guys, you are learning English. You can speak the language, you can write the language, but you need to use the language as a tool to produce. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant. All
Hmm.
right. Therefore, the Liberian Association of Writers was founded, and the focus was to encourage Liberians that really wanted to write, and those that have the potential to encourage them further to write, and those that have written but have not published to develop that avenue, to expose them to the avenue to be able to publish their works. What helped the organization was that the American Embassy, along with the British Embassy, they will have people come to work with us. So they had writers' workshops. We utilized the facilities such as the USIS library and so forth. So we had extensive workshops done at the university, done at the libraries, and we had reading sections done at the embassies and so forth. But this was an encouragement to us. As a result of that, some Liberians were able to publish their works. Okay. Uh, Now, there were some of us that wrote some work and took them to the university, and now they have found a part of the curriculum of African literature. Well, we are missing a lot as Africans because if you go on the village level, you notice our folks speak in a different way. The proverbs, the tales, the myths, and the cultural, the sociological system, all of those things, we miss them, but we need now to come and recoup them and embed them in our reading material, in our curriculum. So those of you that have the PhDs, that are experts in different areas, the challenge has to be met.
Hmm. I agree. I totally agree. I almost said Dr. Dukley. What say you? What kind of role should society play in the uplifting of our literacy in Liberia? We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I was saying whatever approach that we embark on, that approach has to be comprehensive. The brother was just talking about, literature and the various genre that he was exposed to and why. You see, before I can even delve further in that, I just wanted to make this comment about partnering with the community. You know, in my last exposure in grade school, I was at an inner city school, and this inner city school in this city, it has it's one of the difficult schools in the inner city here. And so, but they do have a lot of resources to support the students. And most of the students come from very difficult background, And so, one of the things that the school does is that the school does provide. They have a breakfast and lunch program, and the lunch and breakfast is provided by a neighborhood store that is owned by one very wealthy family. As their contribution to the school environment, they provide everything the school needs to provide breakfast for the students. And there's uh, another person who comes from another foundation within the community that provide for lunch. So there are multiple ways the schools can partner with the community to make the student life a little bit more easier, a little bit more less stressful. You know, especially in the neighborhoods where most of the students are high need students. You know, so um, it's possible. Like somebody was talking about Getty, this Indian guy. He's been feeding a lot of Liberians. He's been doing a lot of good things. Uh, the schools can partner with the community and the business sector so that they can help to improve the students' lives. Now, you know, Brother William was talking about, the talent is within our community. But in order for you to identify those talents, you must first establish and properly document what the needs are so that you can find the necessary expert in who can help to deal with every need. Now, my area of expertise, even though it is in school psychology, but I can also be a part of whatever planning that is needed to to provide for if it's because as a school psychologist, one of the things you do when you are assessing and you are evaluating, you have to look at the child from when the child was in the mother's womb until that particular time that you are assessing. So that assessing encompasses the reading comprehension, uh, uh, I mean, or the lack thereof of the reading comprehension, cognitive development. What are the cognitive roadblocks that are preventing this kid from learning? So you look at the child, and then once I am done with my assessment, then the school social worker comes in and complement what I has started. So it's a whole lot of things that must happen
Mhm.
before this child is whole and able to learn. But we need to put in place all the necessary, the needed resources that he or she can lean on to learn. In other words, the environment of learning must be conducive to learning, and that is on us. And on us, I mean the teachers, the parents, the community, and everybody else. And so when we're approaching it, we have to approach it in a holistic way so that you don't leave one part. Because you see, you can get one part right. If one part is wrong, trust me, it's a puzzle. You have to have all the pieces together in order for you to get the desired outcome. So if one part of that puzzle is missing, trust me, you're not going to get that desired outcome. So it does require in my opinion, a non-orthodox way of thinking about this thing. Look, and that's true for the Liberian society as a whole. We need to look at education differently than we have been looking at it. This reminded me of when I got into the school division that I was working at. They were trying to phase out teachers who had the 2-year teacher training. So they came to the realization that we don't need these people anymore. When we had them, we needed them at that time. So they phased out everybody who had 2 years teacher training to the 4-year Bachelor of Education. So
Mhm.
that was another revolution. So I mean, I'm just using this as an example to see to sort of show how we can revolutionize, we can be innovative in our thinking, because I'm not sure if KRTT, I don't know if the teacher training is for 2 years or more, but my understanding was it was 2 years. I'm not sure though. So that's one way we need to look at it. And then once we have the qualified teachers, how do we utilize these teachers so that we can maximize our learning environment? So we have uh, uh, Dr. Tuo Ma here, we have Elaine here, and the brother Thomas. So myself, and then many other people. We can come together, just like somebody was talking about. How do we improve our legislature? You got proposals with A, B, C, D. We can do the same thing in our education. We come together, we create a forum where we can brainstorm and put together a document and present it to the national government. That can be our contribution, and I think it's something that we can do. Now, we'll probably get to know each other from this program, from this show, and it can be something that we start from here.
Hmm.
And because at the end of the day, it's going to fall on us whether we like it or not. So we either try to see if we can initiate something, because we can sit here and say all what we know. If it doesn't get to the people who make the decision, or if it doesn't get to the people who can decide what happens, sometimes it's just a futile effort. So if we sit here today, the problem is just so compounded, and but I'm sure we can start from somewhere meaningful that will yield some desired outcome.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Elaine now, because just what Brother Dugal was talking about, a lot is pivoted on the teacher. But Elaine, can you share with us a successful literacy initiative?
Okay.
It could be local or
Sure.
international
Sure.
that
So,
Liberia could learn from and adapt.
so I'm currently working in Liberia. I'm the director for academics at Heritage International Leadership Academy, the number one school in Liberia. And when I'm not just boasting, I'm being very factual. Jimmy, you visited our campus. You
Yeah.
know the kind of work we do there. So I'll share what we do at HeLa or Heritage. We have what we started off when the CEO said, and someone who I hold in very high regards, who is an excellent teacher at heart, said, we need to continue pushing reading. And I was like, yes, even though the kids they read, but we
Mhm.
needed to push it so that we had 100% if possible. And these are kids that, go to a very high functioning school, but we still needed to ensure that everyone there developed a love for reading, for fun, right? So I gathered a committee and we started to put posters out around campus, reading this, make reading this, reading blah, 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 all over campus. That was the first step. The second step, it was like a community idea. So the student didn't have to be your student, but if you saw a student just sitting reading, these teachers would take a picture of them and send a picture to me. And I would wrap up. I had a whole to do container of chocolates and candies and stuff. And I would make a little parcel and give it to them. And there were times where I would call them in the Wednesday morning assembly to say, look, this student was caught reading. So you see, it sounds like it's done on a very small scale. But if you look at that program, something that's simple, and try to mimic that on a national level by not giving children treats but other incentives like I mentioned, it would spread. So this is what we do at our school. Also, if you have time, please research Heritage International Leadership Academy, HILA. All right. So, but there's another program that I looked at that I liked, that kind of reminded me of the way I look at teaching reading as a past classroom teacher and a person who trains, a trainer. The Room to Read program. So when you have a minute, and this is on a global level,
Hmm.
the Room to Read. So when you have time, look that up. It's a very good program. So look up HeLa and just remember our initiative that I just mentioned. So those are two initiatives that I like. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
How about Dr. to a meh. I'm sure you have some examples, initiatives that you can share with us that we all can glean. Some Liberia as a whole can choose to adapt and and incorporate.
I think that especially for those who probably have already gone further, and I've missed the part of the important part where you reading becomes something that is embedded within you. I think for those who, the ones, especially the ones that we can capture right now, like the ones in early learning, start from there. Find books that like decoded books that will support how to read, phonics wise, lexicon, where everything that they need in order to build their reading skills. And I do agree that even for those who have gone further and may need to go back to learn how to pace their reading and maybe become more interested in reading, I do believe that there's, providing incentives for them so that they can create that love for reading. I do think that when we can do that for them and we help them um, incorporate reading in their everyday lives, because again, some people, it depends on how, I mean, we talk about reading literacy, but learning style, we have to consider those too, because
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
and some people think that okay, if you pick up the book and you learn how to read, what if you're just reading for memorization, or you're just reading because you're chanting, as you go, like especially when it comes to like nursery rhymes and other things. But we have to pick that up and figure out what that person reading style is and how can we tailor
Mhm.
the lesson so that they can understand. Because we talked about comprehension later on. I mean, or previously,
Mhm.
we bring that in so that reading is not that okay, it's there for you to read, but also reading with comprehension, and then reading with passion. So how can we make that out there for them? And I think that the incentives will work out, and then giving them books to take home. And I do agree with what Elaine was saying. You give them the books to take home, and if even if there's no one there to read to them, but someone in the community can read to them. And that idea
Mhm.
of even community buying where they're taking a picture and sending it out. Well, what if there's incentive for them too? How can we make reading a community thing? And I think that would be a good proposal to put out there. They have to have a buy-in. There's the whole child perspective, right? Because when you think that it's just the teacher responsibility, but the parents are the students first,
Right.
teachers. So we have to make sure that they have a buy-in to that. It's not just the school, it's not just the government, but everybody. And if we can start with that, and in all the different crevices of the towns or villages or cities, that we can announce it, what it is through broadcast and put it out there that it's a reading fest. How can we encourage children to come and be a part of this? Not just children, but also family, community. Maybe it's something that family, there is an incentive, you win a prize or something, make reading fun. And then maybe they can come and enact what they read, regurgitate or relay what they thought the reading was about, something fun for them. And I think once you can make reading fun for not just the children but the family and society at large, is something that literacy can be welcome within uh, the society that we're trying to usher it into.
Wow. Okay. Hey, Duke. I'm sure with all your various travels, you can give us a successful story, an initiative that somewhere they carried out that Liberia too can benefit from.
Yeah, when I when I when I first went to Egypt, and the language of instruction was in Arabic,
Hmm.
and I didn't speak Arabic.
Okay.
And so I was kind of wondering, how am I going to do this? I don't speak Arabic. So apparently what they did was they have a pilot. It was, I mean, at the time it was a pilot program. What they did was they brought in people of the same age, and they assign them to a curriculum that must be covered within from 6 weeks to 4 months. So the idea was to, since we were not native Arabic speakers, but
Mhm.
they wanted to make sure that we are able to do basic reading and basic comprehension in Arabic within our first 6 weeks. And I was like, really? I was very intimidated. I was very scared. How is this possible? But they had experts who were expert in this field, and they were able to sort of introduce us to reading and writing, and always, we always talk about reading, but writing is also part of it. And in order for you to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. If you read
Correct.
well,
Yes, the
you'll be
whole
able to
the
write well.
language, the literacy concept. Yes.
That's right. So I think it was very interesting that they within by the end of the fourth month, I was
Hmm.
reading and writing in Arabic as if it was my native language. I mean, I couldn't believe it, but the method kind of worked. And
Immersion,
again,
language immersion. That's what it was. They
that's
immersed you in
right.
the language. Yeah.
That's right.
Hmm.
And when I came to Canada, even here in Canada, my first exposure was with immigrant and refugee students.
Hmm.
And so we had the same thing there, where after we evaluate the students, we identify the areas of strength and their weaknesses. Then we put them together for the same thing. Usually, here we used to do it for one semester, so that we can bring everybody to par, and then we disperse them into their various classes. And it was successful. I mean, we can do the same. We can apply the same model in Liberia, because there is a huge reading deficit at pretty much all the levels in Liberia.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
once that deficit is identified, you create this program where you put all of them together for, if I don't know, whatever amount of time we agreed on, and then once they are up to that level, you disperse them to their various levels. You know, I mean, it's something that I have had a lived experience with it. It worked in Egypt, and it has also worked here. I mean, why can't we adopt something like that in Liberia, so
So
that no one is left behind?
does that strategy, Mr. Dukley, does
But I
that
mean,
sorry, I'm taking over your job, Mr. Eastman. Does that strategy, did you find, and this is out of curiosity, did you find that that strategy helped you to start to enjoy reading in the
absolutely,
languages? Okay.
absolutely,
Okay. So good.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and that, if I can add to that too, because and I think what it does also is that you meet someone who is, at your same reading level as well.
You
So
meet
yes.
them where they are,
yeah, you meet where they are, so
where
that
they are, and then you take them off and they
Yeah,
take
and
it.
that's why I say you identify them,
Yeah.
and then you group them.
you group them. Yeah,
Mhm.
Differentiation.
that,
Yes,
yes.
Very good. Excellent. Hey, Tom,
Yeah.
you have any examples of successful stories that we could glean?
It would not be direct example like the panelist just spoke of where he visited another country.
Right.
There are countries that have very high literacy rate.
Mm-hmm.
It would be useful to look at what they've done,
Mm-hmm.
places like Singapore or even Cuba
Mm-hmm.
and other countries that we can adapt. But in this enterprise, the teacher makes a difference though. And there may be folks that have excellent potential to
Mm-hmm.
read well, but if at all they didn't have any person to to help them navigate the way, they might give up and say, "Well, I can't read. I'm going to go in this area." Let me give you an example. I thought math was difficult, and so when I went to university, I would sit at the back of the class so that the professor would not call on me to solve a problem. I made a mistake one day and asked the teacher, Professor Rao, a question on the subject he had discussed, a concept he discussed the previous day, and he was angry with me. And he told me, "Now come and solve this problem." I said, "I cannot learn under pressure." So he said, "Never you use that word pressure in my class." After this class, come to my office. I went to the professor's office and he told me of his brother in India who thought he didn't know mathematics, but he eventually became an engineer. So he told me, listen, we are here because of you students to teach you, to make sure that you really comprehend what we are doing so that you become successful in each subject. So what you need to do, set aside a time each day. All the homework assignments, make sure you do your homework assignment. When you come to class in the morning, come to my office and we'll go over that assignment. Did you know I started doing that thing and found out math was so easy? Algebra, trigonometry became easy, and I overcame my phobia because of that professor. I ended up having a B plus. The following semester, I made an A in the subject I thought was difficult.
Wow.
So the person that is teaching, that is standing before the students, makes a great deal of difference. You either mutilate the students' potential, or you bring them out and the enterprise. So what
Right.
you did, Doc, I mean, is significant. It could be replicated in other areas, but we do make a difference. We that interact with the students.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And what the last topic here, what we'll deal with, this is near and dear to my heart. Our girl children.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of times, yeah, the girl children, they don't even get a chance to, you know, go far in school. We know that pre teenage pregnancy is very high. Um, I don't know what can we do to ensure that our girls and the children are in rural areas are not left behind in our literacy efforts. Elaine.
So one of the things we always do, we always say to girls, and this is a pet peeve I have with math. Oh,
Yes.
because you're a girl, you can't learn math.
Yeah, which is so wrong.
Like you, Thomas, I struggle with math,
Mhm.
but when the light bulb came on, it came on. In
Yeah.
fact, I started out being a very good language arts teacher. I was scared to teach math until I think I had taught maybe 10, 11 years. And then they said, your teaching strategies are good. It's the same thing, take it over. And then I became what they said, an excellent math teacher. So it was just that programming.
Hmm.
At University of Liberia, I went there for 2 semesters. I barely passed math. Barely. I'm serious. When I left and went to the University of Houston, the light bulb came on. I
Yeah.
don't know what happened. But again, remember at the beginning of this podcast, I said something about teacher training.
Hmm.
The teachers, that person that's standing in front of that girl, those girls, Jimmy, they play a huge part in getting into the heads of those children. Now, mind you, they go home to something else.
Right.
But maybe out of 50, you might just save one or two. And if you've done that, that's great. Because our society, especially the society we live in now today in Liberia, our girls are money makers for us. If it
Mm,
sounds horrible, I am sorry. It is the reality. How do we need teachers who are truly vested in the craft to take these young ladies under their wings and continue to work with them, to let them know that they're just as brilliant, and they're not ready. Okay, in the interior, let's go back to the interior. In the interior, our girls get pregnant just as soon as the girls in Monrovia do. Sometimes even the boys are not sent to school because they got to go out in the fields to work. So, what messages are we telling these young people? Again, if you have trained teachers around those neighborhoods in the rural areas, they can make a difference in helping parents, not only the children. You got to work with the parents first to say, okay, if your child do this, do this, do this, they will do this. They will learn. If they learn this, they will become this person. Let me go to the curriculum. Make the curriculum also, make sure that the curriculum is not gender specific.
ah,
What do I mean by that? Don't say because you're a boy you can learn math, you're a girl you can't learn math, or because you're a girl you will be able to you'll be a strong reader, and because you're a boy, boys don't like to read, boys don't like to write. That I mean, no teacher should say that. You should approach the curriculum and teach all of the children the same way, and make sure those girls are not targeted to be people to just go out there and get pregnant or get married quickly and start having children. So again, that trained teacher who stands in front of those children every day can make or break those children. They make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Uh, Dr. Tue Men.
I
Sorry about that.
when you said that, I thought about my own experience where I had applied for the doctorate program at Cal State East Bay,
Uh-huh.
and I called my brother and I was like, "Hey, guess what? I'm trying to apply for the education leadership program, the doctorate program." And he's like, ah, "Ma, if you go and get your doctorate degree, no man will marry you."
You see, and
So
that's
I
exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
so I said,
PhD for be gender specific now.
I said, well, that's okay. That's okay because I want to be, I want to have a seat at the table. Um,
Exactly.
I want to go in knowing that I will have a seat at the table, and maybe one of the way to have a seat at the table is to go as far as I can, so that they know that I'm coming in with something, you know. And one of the things I was thinking about girls, how many times have they heard that if you many times as female you have to, because we are such nurturers, kind of like, I don't want to say the word compromise, but we have to kind of lessen ourselves and our abilities, only because society says that we have to be the one who be the sacrificial lamb, right? So I think that if we start by giving students, all children across the board, boys, girls, but especially girls, that because there we live in such a the society is mostly male dominated. Well,
Hmm.
if we give them positive affirmation, saying that you are this, you are worth it, you are everything that you can be. There's don't let no one ever dim your light. Don't let everyone. If you say that to them, and making sure that you can walk into this into the room and say what you mean and mean what you say and stand up for your right as long as you have integrity behind it. So I think that offering that, starting with positive affirmation from the time they're little all the way until they're grown, they walk into places where they can speak their mind. That it's okay to say it and not be afraid. Because my father raised me that way. My mom, my father, they raised me. You have to speak your mind, and I was able to speak up and do what I want to do and say that I insist certain things and mean it, and stand
Yeah.
up amongst people so that you're not hiding. If we do that with girls, and in the education field, and say, don't be afraid to go and be a mechanic if you want to be. It's not
Hmm.
just S field. If you want to be the president, if you want to be whatever you want to be, you can be that in that space. That goes for both genders, right? And make sure that we're encouraging children as we're raising them and as we're educating them. It's okay to speak out, but speak out respectfully. Say things what you mean, but say it respectfully. But don't back down only because you're female. You can't speak up because we're in such a male dominated society, and that you don't have a role. You have a role and you have a place in every spaces. I had a friend, that told me once, don't let anyone feel, and I had to say that at a graduation, don't let them no everyone feel that you don't have a room at the table. You have a seat at the table. So if we encourage girls and say that to them, whether it's in the education sector or if it's in the workplace or even in school or in whatever in part of society, make sure that they know that they value their worth and that because of them we are here, right? Because of girls,
Hmm.
because of men, boys, we're here. So that yeah.
Mr. Johnson, you want to go?
Yeah, I think we should adopt a policy where no person should be left behind or be
Hmm.
deprived of privilege of education based
Hmm.
on their gender, right? folks should have access to educational opportunities, irrespective of whether they're girls, children. In fact, children should be the center
Mm-hmm.
of around which we build our, because they are the future of the country. If we have to adopt a national policy to and enforce this, it should be done. We should also be in an area where we revisit some cultural practices that prevent girls from accessing the necessary education at the right age, at the right time. There are certain things we have to disembed in our cultures. I do know we have societies that where girls have to go into certain, societal bush, therefore
Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
not in school. Hey, if those practices are not positive, if they are depriving our girls of education that is needed for them, then we should disembed those kind of practices from our culture. Not every cultural practice is good, right? So let's center education around children. They are the precious jewel. Let me use President Tolbert's language. They are the precious jewel. Girls are also precious. They should not be discriminated or left behind because of their gender. Uh, in this 21st century, my brothers and my sisters, we Liberians have the opportunity to do it right. You see, we are linked to a country that is very, very much advanced. So the question that keeps popping up in my mind, why is it Liberia that is linked to the most advanced country in the world is lagging behind?
Mm.
And some of the reasons is that we have clung to certain practices that are just detrimental to our progress and development. Let's get rid of those practices. That is discrimination, for instance. Jimmy, I'm glad you put it. Why should we do it? Ensure girls and children are not left behind, especially those in our rural areas. Our rural areas should be developed by this time. In
Mhm.
fact, going forward, our areas should have the best development around, because as you travel throughout the United States, hey, I like to go to the rural areas because they are ideal environments. They have all of the necessary amenities you need to lead a healthy or wholesome functioning life. We have the privilege. We have It's a challenge, and we I think we can meet that challenge as the children of the United States. United States is the greatest country to my mind. We Liberians that came out of the United States should be greater. That's the kind of view I have. That we should do better because we have access to all of these amenities. Why can't we transplant the good practices to Liberia? Whatever is the impediment, let's root out those impediments.
Hmm.
Make sure the best come out of us.
Thank you. Brother Dugley, can't hear you.
Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's a very important one, and I personally have individual bias when it comes to that, since I have three girls myself, and so you can see where I'm coming from with that. One of the things that would need to happen is we need to create an awareness, because I think that part of it is more cultural
Mm-hmm.
than it is anything else. So, and I can speak based on my own individual experience in my own community. And I can tell you there is an upward mobility, a trajectory upward in my own community, where there is now some awareness in some quarters where they are now allowing females to go past high school and continue to post secondary. And so that's the progress in a way. And so, you know how we were talking about the model of immersion, and that
Mm-hmm.
that model of immersion needs to apply to almost every subject, not only English, but it can be applied to every subject, so that you bring all the students at par with each other. So it doesn't have to be only in English or whatever. I remember when I was teaching French, and some of my African teachers. There's a Congolese gentleman who is from Congo. He teaches math. He said, "Oh, you're from Liberia. How come you're teaching French?" And I was like, uh, and I did French as my minor, as my minor teaching subject. So it comes from the mentality that when people internalize, when people think that they can't do something and they internalize it, it becomes part of their way of thinking, and that's what we need to get rid of. Trust me, mathematics is not as hard as people think it is. It's just the mindset that we approach it with that makes
Exactly.
you feel like it's hard, but it's not. So we need to get them to get rid of that mindset and that way of thinking and realize that math is like English, math is like any other subject. Once you put your mind to it, you can do it. And so it doesn't matter if it's a boy, it's a girl. Every profession is open to anybody, and these are the things that we need to promote, so that they know that they have no limits. As a female, you can be an engineer, you can be a doctor, you can be whatever you want to be, as long as you put your mind to it. So these are the kind of things that we need to promote, and we need to engage our communities at the cultural level, at the social level, so that we can make this way of thinking part of the mainstream in our communities. Because once it becomes the way of thinking and the mainstream, trust me, these things can gradually, we can gradually do away with this way of thinking, in a way that it won't hamper the learning of girls. Because not only my community, but I know there are other communities where people think that a female is supposed to be a homemaker, and that's it. And so sometimes you see girls, little girls, when you talk to them, they will tell you, "Oh, I want when I grow up, I want to have two children." And I mean, they don't talk about anything that looks like having a career, you know. And I really like the example that Dr. Ma just used, because it's almost like they are daring you to do it. You can't do this. How dare you? You are a female, and I mean, what a condescending way of bringing women down. I mean, how? I mean, she is not any less than any man. If getting a terminal degree is what she desire, why don't you encourage her to go for it, instead of making it sound as if to say, so what man wouldn't want to marry an educated woman? So you can see how it's almost like your PhD is going to make you intimidating to men. So for that reason, why would you want to fulfill, that wish for at the expense of your marriage life? So it's just trust me. In my opinion, it's a very backward way of reasoning. I think a man should be proud of their wife being a PhD, a PhD holder and all that. To the contrary, it makes the man look good. It makes the man look, strong, because they say behind every successful man, that's I mean, but again, it has to do with the mindset. And so, Jimmy, when we talk about girls learning, we need to help. We need to be part of the shifting of perceptions and how people view women in general, and then girls in particular, because Uh, what you see in your household growing up, it becomes part of your way of thinking. And so once you create a greater awareness where people know and people feel that girls can also learn, then they can adopt that way of thinking. And as long as they adopt that way of thinking, then you can expand that beyond your household. It becomes part of your community, and the next thing you look, people are going to say, "Oh, I can do math. I can do." So I mean, it's just we need to create an environment where people are willing to learn. People are willing to change their mindset. People to change their way of thinking, to feel that they can do anything they wish to do.
Thank you. I think we've touched a lot of salient points to this evening. Now, I'd like to just go around for your closing comments so we can wrap it up here. Uh, Ellen, go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to make it very short. Time has been well spent. But before I get into that, let me just say this to you, Mr. Ducle. That comment you made, what man wouldn't want an educated? I think an educated woman, that's a different show. That's for a different show. Because because believe you me, that's debatable. But I digress. I'll go on to something.
That's
But on
okay.
a serious note, to be able to bring reading awareness to Liberia, again, we need trained professionals that will teach reading, literacy, while differentiating, meaning that we meet the needs of those students, get to the levels, and encourage them, show them where reading can take them, teach them the comprehension skills, the decoding skills as well. And again, like one of the panelists said, Mr. Dukla, I believe it was you as well, that says something about writing so that our students, because some of the things I read on Facebook, I am appalled at the language, the writing skills, the
Yeah,
spelling, everything.
yeah,
So, and that is what literacy will take care of all of these issues, what we call the whole language approach.
yeah.
Uh, but for our purpose today, we focused on reading, and so just let's make sure that our teachers are trained, and that's what I have to say from my end. Thank you.
Yes, and Dr. Meh.
I want to say first, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. And I think literacy is such an important aspect to our
Mhm,
society. When you teach children to read and write, but not excluding their cultural, their background, their tradition. Because I think if you teach students, children, adults, anyone within a certain society, you give them the opportunity to bargain with the next, to bargain the future. Literacy takes you out of not just poverty, but also out of slavery. Because if you sign something that you cannot read, you are obligated to that thing that you signed. And just like Elaine has said previously, literacy is a human right. It's a human right, and I think it's something that we have to consider within whether it's whatever diaspora we're within, or within even in like we're part of Africa, all over Africa. We have to also encourage and push that it is important that we educate our families, our students, the children that are there, because they're especially young ones. They're going to be the one who's going to make the right decision for us tomorrow. So it is important for us to practice and push that, but also the society, the people that are in charge of the education system back there, give opportunity to those who wants to come out and help. Do not create a blockade for them so that they cannot help, because when you do that, you're stifling the people who need it the most,
mhm,
especially those that are farthest from opportunity and those that need the education the most. So please let us provide that opportunity so that we can teach our young people to read and write. Because tomorrow, when we're sitting in our, when we're older and we're watching the TV and we're hearing our young people speak, because they learn how to read and write, and read with comprehension, not just read, because you have to read with comprehension, and also learn how to write appropriately, but not excluding our culture and our tradition. So thank you.
Thank you. Thomas.
Thank you. It's been a great opportunity being a part of this great panel. How to build a culture of reading in communities with limited access to books and libraries. To my mind, is to provide books, access to books, build libraries where needed. But the initiative of teaching reading rests with the teacher. Therefore, we have to strengthen our teacher training institutions
mhm,
that once existed that were excellent. I don't know the state now. The last time I visited KRTTI was in 2022, and I was appalled by what I saw. But we need to strengthen those once great institutions and have our teachers trained.
mhm,
And then go further and have it done on a broader scale. Government must institutionalize this vision that everyone in the country must learn how to read and write, young as well as old. And we must put the necessary support,
In
financial
place.
support to this, and we must get the private sectors involved as well, government as well as private institutions, private sectors, that in fact did drive literacy. Because I'm a product of Kavala Firestone, and I'm proud of what I started with in Kabbalah Firestone. I had all my books. So embedded from that primary level was the love to read, right? Those I don't know what Firestone is doing right now, but the books that were made available, if Firestone still does that, we encourage them to continue because it did build into the products that came from there the love of reading and they excel in whichever area they went. How can we implement or adapt best practices in other countries? Uh, this evening, it was articulated, some best practices were articulated where we can adapt them and apply them to our own country in terms of what we should do to ensure that girls and children are not left behind. And I'm suggesting there should be a zero tolerance of leaving anyone behind.
Amen.
Every person. Now, this is where my religious background comes in. In the eyes of God, there is no man or woman, right? We are all created the same. Therefore, if it comes to learning opportunities or whatever opportunities there are, we must all have access to those opportunities, especially children being the precious jewels, the future of the country. The focus must be placed on them, and we should spend as much money we can afford, mobilize the necessary resources to strengthen primary kindergarten education, where indeed reading
Yes.
really starts.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Take us out, Duke.
I wanted to thank you very much, Jimmy, and I want to say very big thank you to my fellow panelists. It's been a very rewarding exchange of ideas here. I really appreciate all of you for being here with us today. I think on this panel, there is some part of all of us where we are passionate about education in one form or another. And I think that's a good thing. And some of us on this panel today, we are product of our own system where we have had experience, and so we have also had other experiences that we can blend with our local experience and see how better we can improve. But I was just wondering as the brother was speaking, when I was in Egypt, every year I was just given a slip and I would go and pick up my textbooks for the year, and that's it. From up until when I graduated from high school, and coming to Canada, the same thing. The kids in the last week of August, school starts here mostly in September. The last week of August, they're all given their slip. They're asked to come pick up their textbooks. So I was just wondering if Liberia is not capable of providing the books to the schools. I mean, I'm just wondering because one of the ways to start is to provide the basic, like the reading materials, and then you can expand that to include other areas of reading. But textbooks, and because I always hear people say, oh, you have to buy this pamphlet, and I keep wondering, why do you have to buy a pamphlet? Is it the lack of books? And so we have to start with the basics. I mean, we need to provide books, we need to provide textbooks so that these kids have something to start with. Then the other things we can think about improving the other things. So I would suggest on this platform today, maybe to set aside a program or a show where those of us who have some interest in improving our teaching and our school system to come up with a formula that we can put together as a formal document and present it to our decision makers. And so This is a very interesting topic, and I really enjoyed the conversation with all these fine Liberian minds today. And
Hmm.
I hope that this is something that we just started, and I hope to be in your company again. Thank you.
Yes, we will summarize all what we discussed today and advance it to the appropriate authority.
Jimmy, may I interrupt for a second?
Please do.
Okay, and this is for another show as well. Going back to what you just said, Mr. Dukley, why are we not writing our own textbooks? But I also want to add to that, why are we not writing our own national exams? Why are we going somewhere else
Yeah.
and having and testing our children on what we're not teaching?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
another show, Jimmy. I just gave you a
All
topic.
right.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Hold your thoughts, put it together, all of you, and we will submit it because we love Liberia, and as our song always says, we are all Liberians.
We are Labira. Labira is our Labira people. Yeah, you raise it all we want. Labira. Yeah, you raise it all we want. Labira, me Labira. Oh, Labira. Our father. Why
Okay. I will lose lots of money.
Thank you, folks.
All right. So it's all over.
Well, I'm glad I stayed on because I was like,